Have you ever been the first person everyone calls, but the last person anyone checks on? Have you dropped everything, your plans, your rest, even your peace, just to help someone, not because you want to, but because you feel guilty saying no? If any of that sounds familiar, then this story is for you. In a small town tucked between rolling hills and narrow streets, there lived a man named Miguel. He was 55 years old, not tall, not loud, just a carpenter. A humble man with rough, calloused hands and a smile that made people feel like everything was going to be all right. Miguel had lived in that town his whole life. He knew every neighbor by name. He knew which doors stuck in the summer heat. He knew whose fence needed new posts, whose kitchen table wobbled, whose roof needed patching before the rains came. And they all knew him. They called him in the morning. They knocked on his door at night. They stopped him on the street with, "Miguel, just a quick thing. Nothing big, won't take long." And Miguel always nodded, always said yes, always picked up his tools. His workshop smelled of sawdust and cedar. His truck was old but reliable. And his reputation was everything. Miguel will help. That's what people said. And they were right. He would leave before sunrise, carrying heavy tools to a neighbor's house 3 streets over. He would spend the afternoon fixing a widow's broken cabinet. He would stay past dark, replacing floorboards in a family's home, then walk home tired, eat whatever was left in the pot, and fall into bed like a stone dropped into still water. And then do it all again. The thing about Miguel is that he genuinely wanted to help. This wasn't resentment, not at first. He felt a deep, honest warmth when he saw relief on someone's face. When a door swung open smoothly after he fixed the hinge. When a child stopped crying because the rocking chair was steady again. That feeling, that was his fuel. But somewhere along the way, without noticing it, that fuel had become something else. It had become his identity, his reason for existing, his proof that he was a good person. And that is where the trouble lived. Here is what nobody saw, or maybe what nobody chose to see. Miguel's own home was falling apart. The front step had cracked 2 winters ago. He kept meaning to fix it. There was a gap in the kitchen wall where cold air crept in every October like an unwanted guest. The roof above his bedroom had a soft spot that worried him, and during heavy rains, he placed a bucket on the floor and listened to the dripping with a tired patience that no man should need in his own home. His garden, once a source of quiet pride, was now a tangle of weeds. Tools left outside had begun to rust. The window shutters hung unevenly, giving the house a look of exhaustion, like a face with one eye drooping. And Miguel? Miguel was tired in a way that sleep could not fix. He skipped meals. Not because there was no food, but because by the time he came home, he did not have the energy to prepare any. He sat at his table at night, staring at nothing, too drained to move, but too restless to truly rest. His body ached. His back had been speaking to him for months, not in whispers, but in shouts. Still, he carried the tools. Still, he climbed the ladders. Because deep inside, Miguel carried a belief he had never said out loud, but one that ran through everything he did like a current beneath still water. If I say no, I am failing someone. If I don't give, I am not a good person. That was the voice. That was the chain. And it held him tighter than any rope. Whenever a thought crossed his mind, maybe not today, maybe I need rest, that voice would rise up immediately. What will they think? What if they struggle without you? What if they think you don't care? And Miguel would pick up the tools again. He gave away his Saturdays. He gave away his evenings. He gave away the quiet hours that a man needs just to be himself, to sit still, to breathe without purpose. He gave until there was almost nothing left to give. It came in October, not just the rain, the kind of storm that arrives with intention, wind that bent the trees sideways, lightning that lit up the whole sky in white silence before the thunder shook the walls. Miguel had been watching the clouds gather since midday, and his mind had gone to his own roof, to that soft spot, to the way he had patched it last year with material that he knew, even then, was not good enough. He had told himself he would fix it properly when things slowed down, but things never slowed down. That evening, just as the sky opened up, his neighbor Andres came running to his door. A section of Andres's roof had lifted. Water was getting in. His wife was panicking. Could Miguel come? And Miguel stood at the threshold of his own doorway, heard the rain hammering the streets, felt that familiar pull. They need you. Go, go. And he went. He spent 2 hours in the storm. He climbed. He hammered. He soaked through to the skin. His hands went cold and his back screamed at him. But he got it done. Andres's roof held. Miguel walked home in the dark, drenched and shivering, and pushed open his front door. The bucket in the bedroom was overflowing. Water had spread across the wooden floor in a dark stain. The soft spot in the roof had given way, and the rain had come in without hesitation, without apology, without waiting. It had soaked through the ceiling. It had warped the floorboards near the bed. It had ruined the few books on his nightstand, including one that had belonged to his mother. Miguel stood in the middle of his bedroom and looked at the damage, and something in him collapsed. Not loudly, not dramatically. There were no shouts, no broken things, no fists through walls. It was quieter than that. It was the kind of collapse that happens inside a man's chest when the truth finally gets too heavy to keep carrying. He sat down on the edge of the wet bed and put his face in his hands. He had helped Andres keep the rain out of his house, and no one had been here to help him. He sat there for a long time. The rain outside slowed and then stopped, the way storms sometimes do, as if they know when they've said enough. The next morning, Miguel walked. He walked without direction at first, just needing to move, needing air. His feet took him toward the river, the slow, wide river at the edge of town, where the reeds grew tall and the morning smelled of mud and clean water. That was where Don Emilio lived. Don Emilio was 78 years old and had been a craftsman all his life, a maker of wooden furniture, hand tools, small, beautiful things. He had retired years ago, but he still kept a small workshop behind his house, and on most mornings, you could find him there, sanding something unhurried, listening to the river. Miguel respected Don Emilio the way younger men sometimes respect the very old, not with reverence, but with the quiet recognition that this man has survived something long and complicated and has come out on the other side still gentle. Miguel did not go to Don Emilio seeking advice. He was not even sure what he was seeking. He just walked, and Don Emilio was there. The old man looked up from his workbench without surprise, the way men who have lived long enough are rarely surprised by anything. "You look like a man who slept in a wet field," Don Emilio said. Miguel almost laughed. He sat on the old wooden stool near the workshop door and told him about the storm, about Andres's roof, about his own bedroom, about the book, about the bucket. Don Emilio listened without interrupting. He kept his hands moving as he worked, slow, even strokes of sandpaper across a piece of oak, as if stillness might make the telling harder. When Miguel finished, the old man was quiet for a while. Then he set down the sandpaper and looked toward the river. "You see that river?" he said. Miguel looked. "It has been running for longer than either of us has been alive," Don Emilio said. "It feeds the land along its banks, the fields, the trees, the animals. Everything that grows near it grows because of it." Miguel nodded. "But even a river that tries to water every field without pausing eventually floods itself." Miguel did not say anything. "It doesn't do that because the water is bad," Don Emilio continued. "The water is good. The water is the gift. But a river needs its own banks. Without them, it stops being a river." He paused. "It just becomes a flood. And a flood," he said quietly, "does not nourish anything. It only destroys." Miguel sat with that for a long moment. Then Don Emilio turned and looked at him directly for the first time. "Kindness without limits becomes self-destruction," he said. "The first person you must build is yourself." Miguel walked home slowly. He turned those words over in his mind, the way you turn a stone in your hand, feeling the weight of it, the edges, the smoothness. The first person you must build is yourself. He looked at his house as he approached it. Really looked. The cracked step, the hanging shutter, the garden gone to seed. He had walked past these things every day for 2 years without truly seeing them, without letting himself see them. Because seeing them would have meant admitting that he had abandoned something, not someone else's home but his own. That afternoon, he started on the bedroom floor. He had the wood. He had the tools. He had done this same work in other people's houses 100 times, and now, for the first time in a very long time, he did it for himself. He was halfway through when there was a knock at the door. It was his neighbor Rosa. A kitchen shelf had come loose. Could Miguel take a look? Just a quick thing. Miguel set down his chisel. He felt the old pull immediately. The instinct to say yes, to pick up the tool bag, to go. It was so deeply worn into him that it moved through his body before he had finished thinking. He took a breath. "Not today, Rosa," he said. His voice was calm but unfamiliar to himself. "I need to fix my own home first." Rosa blinked. She was not unkind, just surprised. "Oh," she said. "Of course." And she went. Miguel closed the door and stood in the hallway for a moment, his heart beating fast. The guilt came immediately. What if she thinks you don't care? What if she struggles? What kind of person says no to a neighbor? He stood with the guilt. He did not run from it. He let it rise and then slowly let it settle. Then he went back to the floor. The days that followed were not easy. There is something almost physical about changing a habit that deep. It does not feel like growth at first. It feels like loss, like something has been taken from you. People knocked. Miguel said, "Not today, or perhaps another time, or I am working on my home right now." And each time, the voice inside him rose up with its familiar accusations. "You are selfish. You are letting people down. This is not who you are." But he kept going. There were moments he almost broke. One evening, a young couple 2 streets over had a burst pipe, and Miguel heard about it through a mutual neighbor. He stood in his garden in the fading light with his tool bag in his hand, genuinely torn. He knew he could fix it in an hour. He knew they would struggle without help. But he also knew that his own roof was still not fully patched, that his back needed one more day of rest, that if he ran to every emergency, he would never finish what he had started. He set the bag down. He sent word through the same neighbor about a plumber in the next town. They were fine. The sky did not fall. Slowly, week by week, his house changed. The step was repaired. Solid now, safe. The roof was patched properly this time, not with whatever was left over, but with good materials chosen carefully. The kitchen wall was sealed. The garden was cleared, turned over, planted. He found the work calming in a way that other people's repairs had never been. There was something different about labor that comes home with you. His tools were cleaned and organized. His evenings became his own. He cooked actual meals and ate them sitting down. He slept without the tight restlessness of a man who has given too much and knows tomorrow will demand just as much again. His body began to recover. His back eased. The hollow exhaustion that had lived behind his eyes for years started to lift. He was still Miguel, still kind, still capable, still willing. But he was no longer empty. November brought another storm. This one was worse than October's. Deeper rain, harder wind. Miguel watched it come from the window of his now repaired bedroom and felt something he had not expected. Calm. The roof above him held. The floor beneath him was solid. The walls kept the cold out. He had built this. He had chosen himself first, and now his home could protect him the way a home is supposed to. When the storm hit full force, his phone buzzed. Messages from neighbors. Andres again. The family on the corner. A woman from the far end of the street. "Miguel, can you come? Can you help? The water is—" He read each message. He did not panic. He did not run out the door with his tools before he had even put on his boots. He answered the ones he could reach safely. He helped Andres, but not alone in a storm this time. He went with a plan, with proper materials, with his own house already secure. He helped 2 families near him who genuinely needed a hand, and then he came home. He did not stay until midnight. He did not sacrifice his warmth for someone else's comfort. He helped the way a man helps when he still has something to give, not because he is running on fumes, but because he is full. When he came back through his own door and took off his wet coat, he stood in his hallway and felt something settle in him, something quiet and sure. For the first time in years, helping felt like a choice, not a compulsion, a gift, not a debt. Maybe you are not a carpenter. Maybe you do not have a roof that leaks or a garden that needs tending. But somewhere in this story, perhaps you recognize something, a version of yourself, a pattern you know too well, the person who answers every call, who says yes before the question is even finished, who carries the weight of other people's worlds on your back and tells yourself it is love, it is kindness, it is who you are. While quietly in the private rooms of your own life, things are falling into disrepair. I want you to hear this clearly. Saying no is not a failure. It is not coldness. It is not selfishness dressed up in an excuse. Saying no, when said with intention and care, is one of the most powerful acts of love you can perform, because it protects the source. It keeps the river in its banks. It ensures that what you give comes from fullness and not from depletion. It makes your yes worth something because it is real. The people who need you most need you whole. Not hollowed out, not running on nothing, not arriving at their door with nothing left in your hands. Miguel gave more after he learned to say no, not less. He gave better, more patiently, more freely, because it came from a place that had been nourished. And that is the lesson. Fix your own house first, not because other people do not matter, but because you matter too. Because a carpenter who lets his own foundation rot cannot hold up anything else for long. So here is the question I want to leave you with today. What part of your life have you been neglecting while you pour yourself into everyone else? What is the one thing, the cracked step, the leaking roof, the overgrown garden, that is waiting for you to finally come home to yourself? If this story moved you, share it with someone who gives everything and forgets themselves. Sometimes the right words, at the right moment, change everything. Please like, share, and subscribe to get more heartwarming stories like this.